It is Juneteenth, and today on the Empowerment Zone, we are celebrating. As many of you know, I'm a native Texan, and today I'm talking with family members about Juneteenth. The conversation includes my maternal 96-year-old grandmother, Izora Jones of Fort Worth, Texas, my mother, Mary Loretta Jones Houston of Atlanta, and her sister, my Aunt Rita Jones Sibert of Fort Worth. We all share our memories of Juneteenth celebrations in Mexico, Texas. And Mexico is spelled Mexia, not pronounced Mexia, but Mexico, Texas.
Welcome to the Empowerment Zone with Ramona Houston, where we zone in on Black and Brown relations and our journey to empowering our communities.
But before we get into the conversation, since I'm a historian, I thought it would be a great idea to give a history of Juneteenth, why we celebrate it, and how it became a holiday. Plus, during the interview, we were all throwing out incorrect dates, which are correctly given in this lecture. I hope you enjoy this short history lesson. So I'm from Brownwood, Texas, and my family are natives of Brownwood. We are one of the 4 original African American families of Brownwood. We were in Brownwood during the founding of Brown County. But on the other side of the family, I am also a descendant of the Cannon and Mosley families, which are original families of Mexico, Texas, in Limestone County. In fact, my grandmother, Izora Jones, was born and raised there. And Mexico has one of the oldest Juneteenth celebrations in Texas. So I have fond memories of Juneteenth celebrations in Mexico, walking with my cousins to the store to buy candy, how hot it was and how much we enjoyed the fairs, the devotional services that happened during the day and the parties at night, all the people camping out in Comanche Crossing, and this wooden one-way crickety bridge that you had to cross to get in and into and out of Comanche Crossing. So you cannot talk about Juneteenth without talking about the founding of Texas and the expansion of slavery. So the founding of Texas begins in the 19th century with the American idea of manifest destiny, that Americans were divinely destined to expand to the United States of America from coast to coast. And so as white Americans moved west, they took their enslaved persons with them. And we use the term enslaved because it's a condition. We don't identify these people as slaves as a noun because they were not that in essence, they were enslaved, which is a condition. So revisionist historians use that term. So as white Americans who owned slaves, and they took their enslaved persons with them. And that meant the permanent breakup of families. No longer were families broken up and you could go visit each other in the plantations next to you. Now they were states thousands of miles away. Mexico, which Texas was a part of Mexico at one time, ended slavery in 1829. And so these wars, whether you're talking about the Texas Revolution, where Texas fought Mexico to become a republic in 1836, or whether you're talking about the Mexican-American War, where Texas fought Mexico to become a state of the United States, ending with the Treaty of Guadalupe in 1848, both of these wars, no matter which one you're talking about, it was all about slavery. Don't believe the hype about it being about something else. It was about slavery because people wanted to continue to own their slaves, and Mexico had ended slavery in 1829. So with the founding of the state of Texas came the expansion of slavery, and most African Americans came with slaveholders who settled in the east part of the state. And slavery in Texas was no different than slavery in other parts of the South. You cannot have a person enslaved and and control them unless you control them mentally and physically. So slavery was a horrific institution. And you can't, many people, let's say, don't appreciate freedom until they understand the horrors of slavery. Enslaved people were chattel property with no rights. They were separated from their families. They were forced to toll the lands. They were prohibited from learning how to read and write. They couldn't travel. They didn't have freedom of movement. They had no right to assemble. They had no rights to citizenship. And most were tortured, beaten, maimed, and many were murdered. But despite these facts, enslaved people have always resisted and challenged the institution of slavery. They rebelled individually and collectively in all types of ways. They terminated pregnancies, they burned things, they ran away, they destroyed property. And when they ran away, many of them ran to Mexico. And they resisted, enslaved people resisted slavery in other ways, in cultural and religious practices and beliefs. But most of all, they had the will to survive. They had the mental and spiritual resilience, and they had steadfast to the prayers and the hopes that there would be a dawn of a new age, and that it would come, and that time did come with the Emancipation Proclamation. So the Civil War, as many of you know, began in South Carolina in 1861 with the Battle of Fort Sumter. And knowing that a house divided against itself cannot stand, on January 1st, 1863, Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, freeing all enslaved persons in the rebellious states. But yet, even though he signed that in 1863, it wasn't until June 19th, 1865, 2.5 years after President Lincoln had signed the Emancipation Proclamation, that Union soldiers led by Major General Gordon Granger landed in Galveston, Texas, with news about the ending of the Civil War. And I quote, "The people of Texas are informed that in accordance with the proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that between employer and free laborer." End quote. So June 19th was truly an Independence Day. After 200 years of chattel slavery, enslaved people celebrated their freedom because they were no longer enslaved. And they've been celebrating it since then. So June 19th has become called Juneteenth in Texas. And Juneteenth is a part of our history and heritage. And Juneteenth in Maher is in Limestone County, and the announcement of emancipation was actually read at the Logan Stroud Plantation to over 300 enslaved persons. And so after that was read, every year in the area they began gathering annually to celebrate Juneteenth. And in fact, in 1898, formerly enslaved persons bought land so that they could memorialize emancipation through Juneteenth observance. This area locally is called Comanche Crossing, but eventually it became named Booker T. Washington Park. And so Maher celebrations attracted people all over the state and country. In fact, it has been estimated that as many as 20,000 people plus gathered in Comanche Crossing annually to celebrate Juneteenth. Juneteenth in Maher is one of the oldest commemorations of Juneteenth in the state of Texas. But Texans celebrate Juneteenth across the state, and we celebrate in so many ways. Family reunions, community reunions, devotional services, acknowledging and celebrating African American institutions, cookouts, cultural and artistic programs, food, games, and fun. And through it all, Juneteenth celebrations have always been supported by Black businesses. And Juneteenth celebrations have spread in other parts of the nation. In fact, Atlanta's own, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., his last civil rights initiative, as all of you know, was the Poor People's Campaign. And despite his death in April of 1968, the Poor People's Campaign continued his vision to have the Poor People's March in Washington, D.C. that summer. The Poor People's March in Washington, D.C. actually ended on June 19, 1968, and partakers returned to their homes in cities across the nation, including Milwaukee and Minneapolis, to celebrate Juneteenth. So that is one of the ways Juneteenth ended up spreading to other parts of the country. On January 1st, 1980, Juneteenth became an official Texas holiday through the resilient efforts of Texas state legislator Al Edwards, and it was signed into law by Governor Bill Clements. So back to Maher. You remember those celebrations used to be really, really huge? Well, in 1981, due to the deaths of teenagers, say their names, Carl Baker, Steve Booker, and Anthony Freeman, due to their deaths because of police misconduct, these celebrations never were as big as they were before, and they were never the same again. On June 17, 2021, because of the resilient efforts of Texans, including Opal Lee of Fort Worth, Texas, mind you, a family friend, Juneteenth became a national holiday, and it was signed into law by President Joe Biden. So as our nation celebrates Juneteenth, may we all, and especially African Americans, continue to celebrate our rich history, culture, and heritage. We do this by upholding and building our families, preserving and protecting our communities, promoting education, supporting and developing African American institutions and organizations such as the Black Church, historically Black colleges and universities, the Black press, sororities and fraternities, and all the other great organizations that are in our communities. By staying politically and civically engaged, becoming economically independent through home ownership and owning our own businesses, being civically and socially responsible, celebrating and supporting African American leadership, challenging institutional racism, and supporting and uplifting Black businesses. So that is our history lesson of Juneteenth. I hope you learned something new and interesting. And with that history lesson about Juneteenth, we can move on to our interview. Enjoy this fun conversation of me talking with my family about Juneteenth. Most of all, I hope you go out, celebrate, and commemorate this wonderful holiday called Juneteenth. Enjoy our conversation. It is Juneteenth, and it is time to celebrate June 19th, 2023. As many of you know, I am a native Texan, and Juneteenth has always been a part of my family's history and culture and experience. And today I have a treat. I have my grandmother, my 96-year-old grandmother, Izora Jones, who's joining me for a conversation today, along with her two daughters, my mother, Mary Loretta Houston, and then her little sister, Rita Sibert. And so we're so happy that y'all would join us today to talk about the history of Juneteenth and what it has meant to our family, what it means to Texans who are African Americans and Texans generally. And just want to share some great stories and just have fun talking about Juneteenth. So, welcome, ladies.
Hello.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you.
So I want to start off with my grandmother, who is a native of Meher, Texas. And Meher has been celebrating Juneteenth since the 1870s. And so, Grandmommy, that's my grandmother. I call her Grandmommy. Grandmommy, I'm so glad you're joining me today. I know this is your second time on the Empowerment Zone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us, what are your memories about Juneteenth? What do you, why Juneteenth? Why did y'all celebrate? What did you do? And what is Juneteenth all about? And what does it mean to you?
What is my what?
What is Juneteenth
Oh,
about?
what is Juneteenth all about to me? Fun, gathering, and food. The people used to cook up a lot of food and box it up and carry it down to the ground. And when we got hungry, my mother would, in her lifetime, would spread it out and we'd all eat. Another thing about the Juneteenth, when I grew up, I'd look forward for getting something new to wear to the Juneteenth. Back in those days, they had started to wear, they called slacks. The women were wearing pants and what they would call slacks. And it was lots and lots of people. Sometimes it would be so many people you couldn't hardly walk. I remember it used to go on for years and years and nothing but happiness and fun. But the one time when somebody got to be the head of the Juneteenth, they what must I say? Added a carnival. And that was the first time they had an incident there.
When the carnival came.
When the carnival was, the crowd was bigger.
Oh.
People come from all over. And a young boy got killed. I don't remember all exactly how it happened, but anyway, that was the first bad incident that I can remember or know about that happened together in a celebration of the 19th of June. Somebody else can come in and say something while I'm thinking.
Okay. Hey, Rita, why don't you tell us, a little bit about the history of Juneteenth in Texas and, your experience growing up as a native Texan?
Well, all I know, Ramona, is that the slaves in Texas realized that they had been free 2 years before they got the message. And so that was Juneteenth, it had to be like 67, 69, because I'm not real sure. I'm not from Meher, so I don't want to be the historian here, but whatever the year that they learned, the slave was free, that's when they began to celebrate. And it happened on June 19th when they started calling it Juneteenth. I'm a Fort Worth native, a city girl. So the one thing that I remember as a little girl, we always went to Mexia, Texas, and that is Mexia. When you see that, don't call it Mexia. It is Mexia, Texas. And Loretta and I, my sister and I, would be so excited because we're going to get to see all our cousins and aunts and uncles, actually on both sides. Just all the families came together and we had so much fun. But the one impression that I got from Juneteenth, there was the religious side of it, the food side of it, and then the camaraderie, the dancing, that thing that I didn't get to do because I was too young. I couldn't go up into the dance hall, but I could go into the, it was like a pavilion that was a church. And we could sing and read and Bible verses. We just had a good time. So the little kids like myself, we would do that. And then we'd go and look up in the window to the people who were dancing upstairs, not over the church, but in this place that they put on stilts.
Mhm.
And underneath it were the food.
Pavilion.
Yeah, the food pavilion. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was really something to see. You remember something?
Well, up above the food pavilion was dance hall.
Mhm.
And that's where the children with a certain age could go to upstairs and dance.
Mhm. I never got to do that.
Yeah. And on top of that, the river was adjacent to the 19th June land, and they had I don't know what they called it, but they could the people that swim could go down there and swim in the river.
Is it the lake, part of Lake
No,
Maya?
it was a river.
Oh, okay.
It's a part of the lake now.
Now,
When
okay.
they busted the dam and turned it into a wild lake, so they can't swim down there at that anymore.
Mhm.
But it was fun. We could go down there and watch mostly it was the boys were swimming and watching them swim in the river. And it was
They have
a
baptized.
fall.
Did they baptize too?
No, well, no. In later years, when the lake come through, it was a shallow place where some of the churches would go down there and baptize those that would join the church in the lake.
Mhm.
But
So,
anyway, through the day and into the night, they would, I guess it would be about 1 or 2 o'clock before most of the folks left the ground to go home, get ready for the next day.
so it's a full weekend celebration.
Yeah, well, they started on the 18th, 19th, and 20th.
Mhm.
Of the 17th, 18th, 19th. and
Okay,
20th.
so it's 4 days.
The 4 days
Mhm.
and nights.
Wow.
And usually it would always be packed with people those few days and nights.
Mhm.
So, Mama,
People-
tell me a little bit about what you and Rita and Grandmommy have shared their memories of Mahair and growing up and celebrating Juneteenth there. What type of memories do you have?
I have just an awful lot of great memories about my hair. It was a time that I got to see all of my favorite cousins, and it was just so much fun. And it was almost like Easter because we got to go shopping for some new shoes and
Oh,
a new
yeah.
dress. You know, I mean, that was really special to go and shop for, to go to Juneteenth in my hair. And like Rita said, the church was in the pavilion, and we would run around and play and run up the stairs. Although we couldn't go into the dance hall, we'd run up to the stairs and try to peep in. And then when we'd get hot, we'd go over to the church because they had fans, and we could cool off and do the religious thing. And now my cousins were older than me, so they got a chance to go to the dance hall, and I couldn't understand why I couldn't go with them. But I don't know what age it was that I was allowed to go into the dance hall. And when I did, I was so disappointed because it was not nearly as much fun as it was downstairs to run around and go to church, you know. So I think the other thing that I remember, like it, you know, when the adults did a lot of drinking, you know, they had lots of beer and whatever kind of beverages they drank, and sometimes people got a little rowdy. And when people got too rowdy or wanted to fight or whatever, the men in the community stopped it. I mean, they policed everything. There's never anything that got out of hand. But the last thing that I remember was two young men. I don't know what they did, but it was the first time the city police came on the grounds. And we never had any trouble to have to call the cops. And they handcuffed these young boys with their hands behind their backs and got in a boat and was going to cross the river and take them to the other side for whatever reason, rather than just driving them out. But anyway, the boat tipped over and those two boys drowned. Never heard anything else about that. And after that happened, I think a lot of people just kind of lost the taste for going down there because it was just different after that. But prior to that, it was the most fun, celebrating time that I don't remember having as much fun as I had Juneteenth. And to go back home and tell all my friends we went to Mahara for Juneteenth, it was just a big deal to do that.
But you know, to add to that, we would tell kids that we were going to what we were getting ready to do for the weekend in our neighborhood, and we'd say we're going to Mahara for Juneteenth. Well, the big thing that surprised me was they said, well, we don't celebrate Juneteenth. My family say we celebrate July the 4th. I said, okay, then goodbye. I knew I was going to have fun on Juneteenth. So, but I was surprised by that, you know. And then I just remember my father saying something. Well, July 5th, July 4th, that wasn't had anything to do with us when that started, but Juneteenth did.
Yeah.
So, so many towns celebrated Juneteenth in Texas, but the two main ones that I ever heard of, or the biggest ones, was the one in Navasota, Texas. And if you ever listen to a Joe Tex song, he sang about people having fun in Navasota on 19th of June. And Mahara, Texas, that to the two biggest ones. Now you kind of have them all over, even all over the country now.
Yeah.
And another thing about that is you could look at the license plates and people came from, I guess, every state in the nation, all over. And, you know, it was always really exciting when you saw people coming in as far as California, you know, just for Juneteenth.
But they were from Texas and they remember how much fun and everybody, it was just a big reunion is what it was. You know, all the families come together. That would be one time we really could see everybody other than Thanksgiving, you know, maybe, and not Christmas because everybody kind of stayed at their own homes. But Juneteenth, all of us were out, you know.
Everybody was out.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I think Grandmommy put it best. Food, fun, and fellowship is what Juneteenth was all about. You know, I have some similar memories as well. Growing up and going to Mahara for Juneteenth every year. And get to see all of my cousins. And it's so funny. I'm sitting here listening to y'all talk about wanting to get into the dance hall. I was stuck outside the dance hall too. That was one of my memories. It's like, I was like, why can't I get the dance hall? I'm thinking, you know, whatever. And it was always some age level before you could get in. So that was one of my memories. It's funny to hear that my aunt and mother have the same memories.
Well, you know, Ramona, when I looked in that room, I was able to walk up there as a grown woman and see that itty bitty room.
And it looked so big, didn't it? When we were little, it looked so big. It's like a dance hall. Yeah, so I totally agree with you. I remember the fair, I remember a
Mhm.
lot of what do you call it, Winnebagos, those camping. I remember a lot of people camping out and that.
Yeah, they even started building cabins down there at one point,
Yeah.
and people had bought cabins, and they built their own cabins, and their families would stay in them.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're there anymore. I remember seeing them. They don't have them there anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
But
just remember a lot of people camping out, and just the party was all night long, and like
all
No,
night.
all
yeah.
night,
family
all
reunion.
night long.
It was a
Mhm.
family reunion. I later learned that the reason that event was so big is that the state of Texas actually donated that land specifically for Juneteenth celebrations.
And it's called Booker T. Washington. What is it called?
Booker T. Washington National Park, I think.
Okay.
And it
Mhm.
was specifically donated for that purpose of
Uh,
Mhm.
Juneteenth celebrations. And that's why people came from all over the state of Texas to celebrate.
mhm.
And
Mhm.
especially when you look at Mahair being such a small country town, how did they have that big of a reach? Is because, people knew to come to Mahair for Juneteenth. And
But
so, although our family is natives of Mahair, right?
mhm. But that something. I have a book that my mother has, or someone had given, says the history of Black people in Mahair.
Mhm.
It was a rich history there,
Yeah.
because there was a college. There was a college there that
Mhm.
they tore down. I was trying to find. I found the guy who told me he was at one time director of it. It's someone I used to work with. He has since passed on, but I said, "Oh man, we got to get a historical marker for that." But when they tore
Mhm.
it down, it's now like a cemetery or something like that.
Yeah, I think so.
But that was about a 2 or 3 level brick building. I remember that building so well.
Yeah.
And but Mahair has a rather rich Black history there.
Definitely. And so we know
Mhm.
that Juneteenth became a state holiday in Texas in 1981.
Mhm.
And that even, contributed to the growth of the celebration of Juneteenth throughout the state of Texas. So Texas actually I always remember growing up, and we had Juneteenth as a celebration, and then we had 4th of July, and we
4th of July.
celebrated both of them.
They're both fun.
Yeah.
We
Yes.
had fun at both, but I mean, Juneteenth was my favorite.
Yeah.
Mine. Only
It
difference,
was my
July 4th
favorite.
was fireworks. Huh? Yeah.
Yeah,
What did
Juneteenth was my favorite as well.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. It was a lot more fun.
I
And
have
another thing, a historical fact, you had to pass our family's land to even get there. And they called
Yep.
that place Comanche Crossing
Yeah.
to get to the grounds of Booker T. Washington National Park.
Mhm.
That's you have to pass their land now to get to
And
it.
either way you went, you had to pass. You had to pass out of there.
The few Black families that still own land around Lake Mahair.
Uh-huh.
So we know that, so we know that was a big celebration until in Mahair until the death of the 3 young men,
Mhm.
Anthony Freeman, Carl Baker, Steve Booker, say their names. And that pretty much changed the course of the celebrations in Mahair. But
Mhm.
let's talk about, what's going on today. We have the national federal holiday of Juneteenth.
Mhm.
The person that is credited for making it a federal holiday is actually from Texas, right?
She's right here from our city, Fort Worth.
Yes.
And I've known Opal Lee for a long time. And of course, she and my mama are the same age. So they knew each other as young women growing up in Fort Worth, But
Now, she taught school, but I don't know what school she taught at when she was teaching school. But, mhm.
but we knew her. I didn't know till later that a member of our church was her sister.
Uh-huh.
So Mama just happened to mention that, and I was going, "What?" And I remember this lady was involved with our youth department, but that Opal Lee was her sister. She
Uh-huh.
has passed on, but Opal made it was very significant. It's a big celebration here in Fort Worth because of her on Juneteenth, and they've been doing things here as well in Dallas Fort Worth area. Now it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Mhm, mhm. And so, what do you think that people should, when you talk about it being a federal holiday and
Mhm.
more people across the nation celebrating Juneteenth, what would you tell them if you could tell them anything?
Well, I think we need to they'll go back and check the history of Juneteenth and what happened to slaves. People who were enslaved in other states moved, their masters moved them to Texas because they knew that the word had not gotten to Texas. And that is a fact. So there were slaves coming from all over. They were sneaking them in because they didn't want them to be emancipated. So they were bringing them to Texas and they wanted them to continue to work. I guess they worked that deal out with the other plantation owners, but I got a chance to read that and I saw it on a documentary, but I was not aware that other slaves were coming from other countries. I think that's the main thing, that we need to learn the history of it and why we celebrate it. Because I mean, there's some people make a joke. It took Texans 2 years to find out they were free,
Yeah.
but it was like, and it had to come by the way of the Gulf of Mexico. Remember, coming through Galveston.
Yeah.
And so probably still took a little time to get that word all over the state.
So, go ahead, Henry.
No, that's all right. I just think that that's one of the most important things. We need to know why we celebrate it and why it was so important. And I'm happy to see so many other Black folk that didn't believe in it years ago are now celebrating it themselves. And because I know there were a lot of folk that were reluctant to celebrate Juneteenth.
Mama?
I think that as people are becoming more and more aware of our history, the history that we were never taught while growing up in school, and even in today's world, our kids are not taught that much about Black history. And I see, a lot of information being spread on the internet and other documentaries, so kids are beginning to see it. And there are people who are sharing information and letting us know about our history. And because we learn about it, then we end up not only appreciating it, but loving who we are. And that's the most powerful thing I think it is about just learning the history.
Yeah, that's real important. Know why you're celebrating it,
Grandmommy, do you have any final words you want to say about Juneteenth and what it means to you and growing up and all that?
Oh, well, I'd like to mention the year that you spoke at the Juneteenth. And you spoke about the people that was involved in the early times of getting the Juneteenth celebration together, and how long some of them worked with the project to get it started. And that's about all I can remember about the organization getting the things in place, and usually whoever was over it before, it would always be on time. It would always be on time. It wouldn't be late. They would have the celebration ready.
Well, it's still going on. There's some good people trying to keep it going.
Yeah.
I do know they are proposed building a museum there on the grounds with pictures and historical facts about Juneteenth.
Oh, really?
Yes, they're working on that. They've been trying to raise funds for that for a while.
Yeah, so
and I would like to add to that, you hear a lot of comments that, when Black people get together, large groups of Black people get together, that we can't get along. But I'm here to say that as many people that showed up for Juneteenth, and there was never, ever any problems, any major problems. Everybody got along. Everybody had fun. It was just a wonderful, wonderful place to be.
Yeah. Well, it brings me back to what I was telling you, Ramona. I wanted to add, when Loretta was in college, and she was the only Black woman in her dorm, and I sent her a picture of an incident that happened in my teenage years in Juneteenth. And she said that she was sitting at a table in the cafeteria all by herself. And I did these stick figures. And I was showing this guy who was going to try to disrupt everything up in the dance hall. And supposedly he had a gun. And I remember all my aunts and uncles underneath the windows, everybody looking up, eating popcorn. I just couldn't believe it. They're just eating popcorn and drinking. And I was, and Daddy was pushing me and Mama into the lake. He was pushing us back away from the incident.
And the stick figures, the stick figures were jumping out the window.
The guy was jumping. They threw him out. He jumped out the window. I remember. I said, I will never forget this. And I remember people going, "Whoa!" There were people going up those stairs. And I just had these little blurry stick figures going up and down the stairs. Those want to go see what's going on. Those trying to get down. Loretta said, when she was at her table at this big white school, sitting by herself in the cafeteria, she just laughed and laughed and laughed. She said, that really bright. I said, here was our Juneteenth this year.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, we had good times.
Yeah, and I think, no matter where you are in Texas, Juneteenth is a big deal for African Americans historically. It's time when we all got together in family, even being, from Brownwood, Texas, we do that we all go to the park and get together as family. But Mahair was the place to be for Juneteenth growing up.
Mm-hmm.
It's just.
And here in Atlanta this year, there's going to be a big Juneteenth celebration, and it's going to start on the 16th through the 18th. And they got some of everything that's going to be displayed at this Juneteenth celebration. So that was a good thing.
So Juneteenth has grown from Texas to be celebrated all over the country.
That's correct.
President Joe Biden, who signed it in as a federal holiday, a national holiday. So everybody, no matter if you're African American or not, you get to go out and celebrate Juneteenth and celebrate the history of our country and the fact that we are all American. We are all able to participate in this celebration. And it's just good to hear the little fond memories that all of us have about celebrating Juneteenth in Mahair. So thank you, Grandmommy.
You're welcome.
For joining me today. Mama and Aunt Rita, thank y'all for sharing y'all's fond memories. It's always nice on the Empowerment Zone just to chill out and talk about some personal and fun things that people do in how people enjoy themselves, their lives, and their families.
Yes.
Ramona, before you go, I'd like to just share some of the things that are planned for Juneteenth in Atlanta for people who listen to your show in and about Atlanta. But there's going to be a cowboys and cowgirls exhibition, dancing horses, double dutch, historical reenactment. African drum and dance, several seminars on different social issues, a major parade downtown. And it's just, they've got some of they got some of everything for everybody. So
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
think this Juneteenth, Atlanta is the place to be.
Well, I don't know. Miss Juneteenth that lives in Fort Worth, Opalee. She actually has a lot going on. You know, they're building a, I'm not sure if they're calling it, I know it's a Black History Museum. I'm not sure if they're calling it the Juneteenth Museum, but but it's being built because of the holiday for Juneteenth, and she's overseeing part of that. I know they have the land and they're getting ready to start building on that. But I did see where she's always going to be the honorary chairman because she's one of the people who've been working on the Juneteenth parades in Fort Worth for many years. So they've got a whole weekend planned. You might just go on the internet. I can't tell you what they are. I do know that the Black Rodeo usually comes in during this time, and they do have a big, beautiful parade, and it's really fun. A little carnivals downtown. Now in our part of town in south side of Fort Worth, and but they may move a little of that downtown as well. I don't know, but just check Fort Worth, Texas, and see what they're doing on Juneteenth. And Dallas.
News.
All of them will be doing something.
Thank you, Aunt Rita. And Grandmama, you have any final thoughts?
Good night.
All right. Thank y'all.
You're welcome.
Love
All
you.
right. Love you.
Love you too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
A special thank you to the incredible team of the Empowerment Zone. Terry Ann Gully, theme song. NADWorks, digital support, and of course, our featured guest.